Drill, baby, drill. That's not a good Trump impression, but those are the words that Trump said on his inauguration.
The inflation crisis was caused by massive overspending and escalating energy prices, and that is why today I will also declare a national energy emergency. We will drill, baby, drill.
And it is so awkward watching Joe Biden and Kamala Harris sit behind and listen to this lunacy. But one of the things that I am getting my opinion changed on is the fact that fossil fuels might be sticking around for a lot longer than I thought. And it's this entire shift in the industry. This is not just Trump being stupid. Check it out. Now, back in 2022, we had oil and gas companies going, hey, we're going to pull back our oil and gas production. We're going to invest more into renewables and invest more into the electricity grid. But that's changing. Right now, it's 2024, and they just backed out. 2 years later, Shell is going to now spend less and is pulling back investment from their renewables. ExxonMobil actually has this 14-year-old project that they've been sponsoring, which is basically to get gasoline straight from algae. Now, if you don't know, fossil fuels come from the fossils of prehistoric algae. Those fossils had oils in them, and then they get buried under heat and pressure. They turned into crude oil over a long amount of time. Same goes with BP. They've got to cut back on their targets for emissions. And I'm starting to wonder why. What happened? Is it just a shift in pitch to make sure the stock prices stay the way they do, just to align with whatever the investor sentiment is? Well, here's an article I was looking at. In this article, they talk about how investors sort of shape what kind of jump these companies can take into green technologies. So, for example, an oil and gas company traditionally has investors that want to invest in oil and gas, right? Now, if they suddenly go, hey, 20% of our revenue is going to be renewables, those investors feel betrayed. They're like, I didn't put my money in here for this reason. I put my money in oil and gas. So they pull their money out. But if they want new investors to come in, looking at that, small change, here they use the example of 20%. If they want new investors to come in, they won't do that until there's enough investment into renewables that they will put in their money for the renewables. And so there's this valley where they have two different types of investors who won't really touch them until they have a commitment completely on one side or the other. And you know what? If it was just investor sentiment that they were playing, I wouldn't make this video. I just leave it at that, right? 1 year, the investors want something, the other year, investors want something else. It's like how companies now just talk about AI just to keep the stock price up. It makes their personal earnings better. I get it, but it's not that, is it? So something has changed in the last few years. And let's just get one thing out of the way. It's not these stupid stop oil protesters. I want to take a moment and just talk about these idiots. Why? Why does this movement exist? I cannot put my finger on it. This is the dumbest thing ever. And I see no correlation between soup and paintings of Van Gogh and dumping soup on them or whatever, just vandalism. Nobody is becoming more aware. No one is pulling their investment out of fossil fuels. This is just stupid. It is so stupid. I don't know why this happens. So it just makes this entire movement against oil look dumb. And even the people you see here in these photographs, right? Like look at these two. They are the most stereotypical, person you can imagine when it comes to the dumb climate activist. Immature kids. And personally, my conspiracy theory is that these people, this movement, Just Stop Oil, is probably like a psyop. It's being run by the oil and gas industry just to make environmental activism and scientists look bad. There's no other explanation. What is this stupidity? Coming back to the topic, we understand that private industry is often just chasing its own investors, and we don't have to take every little change and statement at its face value. But they're not alone. Right? We have Trump making these statements that you heard, declaring a national emergency for energy, which, to be fair, the emergency part is just to get state powers allotted to the federal government. But he's going in a very particular direction, right? We see him taking back powers from the states to basically cut back on electric vehicle mandates, as well as boosting LNG production. And that's not the end of it, right? He's also opening up leases for oil and gas exploration, 30 in the Gulf of Mexico, 10 in Alaska. A lot of these were met with environmental resistance in the past because they are in protected areas, protected due to their ecological uniqueness and sensitivity. The US does have a global hegemony, so we can't really ignore them. They have the biggest economy, great capitalists, a lot of homeless people, and other social problems still. But point being, they can't be ignored. They influence more or less every country's elections all across the planet. And what they do does dictate economic markets. They are the big whale, one of the big whales at least, in the global market. So it's interesting that the entire country would just pivot, right? They're just going with it, and the industry is happy. So there's something that the private industry is seeing, and there's something that at least some part of the Trump administration, including Trump, is seeing that is making them go in this direction. And you might consider I'm being a bit of an idiot trying to chase logic with this administration, but take it this way. As much as I might consider Trump to be a moron, I don't expect everyone around him to be. So if he says something and it gains this much money and momentum behind it, there usually is something else going on. And that's why we have to look at these other things that are happening as well, which I also have to kind of acknowledge they're not really fond of the climate change, right? And Project 2025 is definitely turning out to be a handbook that they're following. And that project really does see climate change and the whole movement behind it to prevent the adverse effects from it as a barrier to wealth, to prosperity. And to that point, they're also directing the federal government to basically not collect the statistics that would discredit their movement. Like, that is fundamentally a conspiracy. But there's another person I've been keeping my eyes on, right? Like, he's been here through Trump, through Biden, and back into Trump, and I think now he's retired. That's Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett has been investing in oil and gas for a long time. And when I got into the stock market, I was keeping an eye on this, and his plays didn't make sense to me. I knew he had a reputation. What he invests in, expects that investment to be very profitable, not this year, next year, sometimes even 4 or 5 years from when he invested. It might be flat for 2 years, 3 years, but eventually Berkshire Hathaway, his hedge fund, it's a great company because they invest with a lot of foresight, and they've been increasingly buying stocks in oil and gas. But it's people like Warren Buffett that really intrigue me. Okay, we have oil and gas companies who definitely just want more oil and gas, but then we have a US administration openly, brazenly going in this direction, expecting great fortunes. And now recently I made a video about population collapse. I don't know if you saw it, most likely you didn't because it barely got any views, but when I talked about it, I was bringing up an author called Peter Zehan, and he came out with a book, The End of the World is Just the Beginning, mapping the collapse of globalization. I did a whole book review on it on this channel, so check it out if you're interested. But there's a section in the book about energy, right? And he talks about this rather as a geopolitical analyst. He's forecasting that the world is not going to get to transition completely to green technology. There's just not enough time and capital to do so. Basically, it requires a lot of capital, so you have to churn the money over a lot of more times in order for everyone else to acquire green technology. But we may not have the time to do that because globalization is falling apart, and that is going to have certain consequences. So basically, we're not going to get everybody moving off petroleum. People who got to experience petroleum so far, great. Maybe countries and small countries, poor countries who could not, may even never make it there. So it's going to be a freeze on technology. Anyone who can escape into green technologies basically manages to escape petroleum, but everyone else will be stuck. And you know what? That may be true to some extent, because I used to really criticize the pipeline that was being put across Canada. I used to work on it for a bit, and I used to really question, like, it's going to take them 10 years just to break even on it, and then the project is supposed to last 30 years based on the fact that it's going to ship gas to China and India. Didn't make any sense to me. But now I'm thinking, maybe that analysis, that future is what everyone is now working towards. Will that create the future that they're working towards? Will it become a self-fulfilling prophecy? Or are they just ahead of the curve and the rest of us just have to take some feel-good news along the way? I don't know. But what I do know is China is not wasting their time. China has surpassed its 2030 goals for renewable energy, and it warms my heart. I know China has not been the most favorable countries, especially for those of us outside of it, but I have to admire what they've done, right? When I was a kid, these like stuff that came from China was seen as crap quality. It used to be plastics were not safe for humans, and just the worst kind of products came from them. You could not trust what came out there. So Chinese mal became just a way to insult anything that was cheap. But look at us where we are now. The whole world is run by them. I truly admire what they've made of their country despite the massive opposition they face globally. So seeing them go this way warms my heart that they do see the same opportunity that I do when it comes to renewable energy. I've started to have a bit of a shift when it comes to trying to understand what the future would look like when it comes to oil and gas, as well as just the different forms of energy that we'll be using. Hydrogen as a stored fuel, it's very clean, it's very convenient, but it's not out there yet. We have so much internal combustion engines and generators and tractors just working throughout the country. When will that hardware get replaced? Can we just all go to pure ethanol like Brazil? But we can't really grow a lot of ethanol everywhere. What will it look like? Nuclear power is just very technologically advanced. There's an entire geopolitical battle happening right now. So I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you think the future is going to look like, say 10 years from now, when it comes to all these different competing interests when it comes to energy? Let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you soon with another video. Cheers.